Welcome to the show, Melissa. Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for being here today. I know that this conversation is so important. So I'm just going to dive in.
Yeah,
You're
let's do
the
it.
Yeah, you're the host of Mending Families Podcast, and I love it so much. You're doing such incredible, important work for families to help them regulate their nervous systems and help their families. So tell us about your journey to starting the podcast and your professional background.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to go way back here for a second, but I promise it won't take forever. It'll be a short story. I'll make a long story short. How about that? So I actually had my first child when I was 19. So got pregnant when I was 18, had her when I was 19, and um, just really was not ready. Like my brain was not fully developed, was not ready to be a mom. And essentially, I talk about how her and I grew up together, that like
Mhm.
I was a child raising a child. And so there was a lot going on with that. I found myself in an abusive relationship with her biological dad. And it was just, I felt stuck. I didn't know what was right, what was wrong. I had a traumatic childhood growing up. Like my dad had schizophrenia. So it was, a lot of chaos in my home growing up. So I didn't really know, like, is this normal? Or I guess not normal, typical. I won't use that word.
Mm.
So sorry. Is this typical? Is this, how do I do this? And luckily I was able to get out of that relationship and decided to go back to college originally for education. But I took a developmental psychology class. And it
Mm.
was that class that I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I love children, but I don't want to teach them. I want to help them.
Mm.
And so I think pretty quickly switched my major to what is it called? Childhood education, psychology, and development.
Mhm.
Um, Really fancy long term, right?
Mhm.
But so I did that and then went on to get my master's in social work. And just really that was kind of the pivotal having my daughter, but then also, that class was kind of the pivotal moment for me where I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And of course, it's not easy. So there was a lot of still hard stuff that happened. And I didn't go to therapy yet because I just thought, like, I'm out of it, I'm good. I was not good. And I yelled at my daughter a lot and I was triggered by her a lot. And it was rough. And, her and I have such a good relationship now. And we can talk openly about how hard that was and that she did not get the best mom that she deserved. And that's really sad for her, that like I wish I could go back and change it, but I can't. And so I just have to keep moving forward. But we both know like she didn't get the best of me. And so then I met my now husband and we had two more kids. And it was after so three girls, it was after our third daughter. I still had not gone to therapy yet,
Wow.
and was still not my best. But by that point, I was working for Child Protective Services and helping families and trying to like help families, do their best. Meanwhile, I'm like not my best. And
Mhm.
so I finally had my first panic attack when my third child was under one, sometime in that first year of life. It's all a blur. And that was kind of the point where I was like, I need to do something about this. And so that's when I went to therapy finally.
Mm.
And by that point, I was like, I don't know, 30 or something. Like I
Mhm.
waited way too long, but I did it. And so I went to
Mhm.
therapy and very quickly realized like, yeah, I'm being triggered a lot by my
Yeah.
kids because I haven't dealt with my stuff. And I'm 43 now, and so I'm still a work in progress. I'm still in therapy. But it's been through that journey where I've kind of started to learn more about like how we can't just say, well, I'm not in that situation anymore, so I'm better.
Mm.
I learned a lot about how I actually caused harm to my kids unintentionally by
Mhm.
not dealing with my stuff. And so, by me lashing out at them, yelling at them, being triggered by them, they didn't know, they didn't understand what was happening. And they don't deserve that. And so it's been a long road of healing, but also I have learned a lot about myself.
Mhm.
I, in the midst of all of that, went to a training on trust-based relational interventions out of the Karen Purvis Institute in Texas. And that was another pivotal moment where it was like, this is how we should be parenting, very much
Mhm.
like connected and building that foundation of connection and trust and felt safety so that we don't have to feel like we're always controlling our kids and telling them what to do, and kids are to be seen and not heard, and all that old school stuff that was like, that's what I was doing because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. But no, like that, it was just like eye opening for me. So that was in 2018, and pretty much since then I've just been trying to like get that out there. Like, how do we help more people see that um, connected parenting is so much better for all of us with our relationships and raising our kids to have positive self worth, and knowing that relationship is hard, but we stick through it. And it's okay to talk about our feelings, and it's okay to say to mom, like, can you do that again? That was really mean the way you talked to me. And so that's kind of it ended up being a long story. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's a brave story, and it's a story that I know I relate to so much. And I'm sure listeners, they're like nodding their head and going, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My mom had borderline personality disorder. And so I spent a lifetime being parentified and taking care of her, and
Yeah.
not realizing that I couldn't outachieve my trauma, and that just because I was out of that situation, like you thought, like, okay, I survived,
Mhm.
I'm good.
Yeah.
And look at all of these things that I've done to prove that I am okay.
Yeah.
And it took me, I'm in my late 40s, and it took a conversation with somebody on this podcast to help me realize, wait a minute.
Mhm.
It's not normal to just want to stare at the wall when you're really triggered and
Yeah.
just like can't do anything for a week because you are so, just in survival mode.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so brave to tell that story because we're in a new paradigm,
Hmm.
and we're beginning to shift how we parent, or I hope we better start doing it, because we're creating a mental health crisis
Hmm.
by not changing the cycle of everything that we were taught to do.
Yep.
Um, and so I think this is so important for us to get ourselves together so we can pass that along and break that cycle.
Yeah.
So, I- first of all, I want to say, if there are anything of the things that somebody's listening to this podcast can relate to, like feeling triggered by your children,
Yeah.
that is absolutely a sign that you have something unresolved that you need some help with.
Yeah.
And so much of that comes up as an entrepreneur, not just as a mom. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how, our traumatic past can show up that we don't even realize because it's the way we've always operated,
Yeah.
or the adults in our lives operated the same way. So can you talk about some of those maybe red flags that can help us, we can be more aware?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think um it's a continual thing. So like I kind of really quick, I'll answer your question, but
Yeah.
um when I started therapy and we had our three girls, I felt like I had gotten to a really good place. And then we adopted our son in 2020, and he brought up even more stuff that I didn't know was
Yeah.
there. Right. So I think that's important to know, is like, we're never done healing. And so
Yeah.
you may feel like, okay, I've dealt with that trigger, or
Mhm.
I feel like I'm great, but then we can't let our guard down and
Mhm.
say, I'm good now. because we have to leave that door open for the possibility that there may be more stuff that comes up, and that's okay. It's
Mhm.
not a bad thing to recognize, like, oh yeah, here's something else I need to work on.
Mhm.
So kind of just putting that out there, that like, and
100%.
I know that there's going to be even more stuff that will come up for
Right.
me. Like maybe someday when I have grandkids, that's going to bring
Mhm.
stuff up. I don't know,
Mhm.
but I never want to get to that place where I feel like I'm good, I'm healed, I can
Mhm.
just move on. So,
Right.
but as far as like red flags we can be looking for, I think for me, what I was realizing is when I was responding to my kids, um, and seeing their faces, that they were afraid. And so if
Mhm.
we are seeing fear in our kids' faces when we are reacting to their behavior or something that they've done, that should be a red flag for us, that why did that happen? Like, why did I get so angry that I caused my child to have fear
Mhm.
with how I was responding? I think a lot of us were raised, a lot of us of this generation were raised to fear the people that are in charge,
Well,
right?
not
And
only that, that was a sign of good parenting.
yes, yes. Yep. If you put the fear of God in your children, then you are a good parent, right? But we just know that like fear-based parenting actually does not help their brains wire
Mhm.
and fire in the right way. That
Right.
what that does then is it has the potential for our kids to grow up to be people pleasers, and they
Mhm.
don't know how to make good decisions without somebody telling them what to do, or they don't know how to have a voice and say that
Mhm.
doesn't work for me, because they're so afraid of making the wrong decision. And that's not good for our kids and their future marriages and future jobs and future, parenting themselves. So I think that's really important for us to see that research shows that fear-based parenting is not beneficial for the long run.
Yeah.
And so I think that can be the first red flag. The first thing we can see is if that's happening often, where your kids are looking at you in fear, there's something there. I think the other thing is that, when I was activated,
Mhm.
I didn't feel like I had control. And so
Mm.
I felt like I needed to get everything in control. I need you to do exactly what I'm telling you to do. I need this to be exactly how it's supposed to be. And the less control I had, the more that I was like getting amped up. And I could feel it. I just felt out of control.
Mhm.
And so being aware of that mindfulness piece of like, why do you feel like you always have to have control? Why can your child not wear two different shoes? Why is it that if we find out at the last minute that something is canceled, that it throws you into this complete, spiral? So some of these things that are just like, that's just life. And
Mhm.
but if it is causing us to feel so out of control because we've lost control of whatever it is, that is another potential red flag.
Mhm.
So I think for me, those are the two big ones that
Mhm.
we want to pay attention to as moms, and dads.
Mhm.
But also if we're talking specifically about entrepreneurs, that control piece, right?
Mm.
Like, how
Yeah.
do we handle when a client cancels at the last minute? Or how do we handle when things don't quite go like you and I are trying to get on this call and my computer it decides to do its own thing? And,
Mhm.
so how do we handle that stuff?
Mhm.
Do, am I freaking out and like,
Mhm.
oh, Angela's gonna hate me now. She's never gonna want to work with me,
Right. Right.
and panicking? Or am I
Yeah.
just like, okay, this is life. How do I get to, and we
Mhm.
pivoted. I'm on my phone now instead of my
Yeah.
computer. But those are the things where like, why is it if we are feeling like we have lost control that it then puts us into a spiral?
Mhm. Yeah, and one of the things for me was like I could handle the big things when things were in crisis. I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could handle it. But little things like I couldn't find my keys
Hmm.
or I forgot an ingredient or something at the store. It was those little things that was just, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the end of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So you're always living in this kind of, you don't know how you're going to feel sometimes from one moment to the next. And so I really like to point out that even though you might have learned how to survive that way your entire life, that's not a very healthy way to survive.
Yeah.
And people around you might feel like they have to walk on eggshells or,
Yeah.
to help you control your behavior. And that's another point that I really like to make too. It's like, we should not be using our kids to regulate our emotions.
Yeah.
And I think that that is something that is really prominent for so many families. It's like, you know, be the good girl or the good boy so mom or dad doesn't get upset, or whoever
Yeah.
who is not in control of their nervous system.
Right.
So let's talk about regulating our nervous
Yeah.
system. And this is something that I don't like. When I learned about this, I'm like, why has nobody ever told me this? I felt
Yeah.
like I had been, a great secret to life had been kept from me.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the strategies that we can use to find more emotional harmony? There's a balance. But and we don't want to have a flat line, flat affect. We want to be able to navigate whatever comes our way.
Hmm.
Especially, moms, every day is unexpected. Something different happens we can't plan. And that is doubly so for entrepreneurship. So, what
Yep.
are some strategies that we can use to, be able to navigate those emotional waters a little bit better?
Yeah. So really quick, let's talk about what's happening in our nervous system when we're activated, right? So with our kids, I use the term "my lid is flipped," and
Mhm.
that makes sense to them, and they're able to use that verbiage as well, right? Like my lid is flipped, and we think that that just relates to the brain, which it does, but also if we can understand that the vagus nerve, which is the biggest nerve in our body, is it runs from our brain all the way down through almost all of our organs and down into our gut, right? So that's why they
Mhm.
talk about how our gut has a it's our we have two brains, right? Our brain and
Right.
our gut, right?
Mhm.
And but what a lot of people don't know is that the vagus nerve is kind of like the highway for information, right?
Mhm.
And so our brain is sending information down through our body, and then from our gut, it's sending information back up to our brain. But the interesting part is that only 20% of the messages are coming from the brain down through the body, where 80% are from the body up to the brain. So we can't just think our way out of these
Mhm.
activated states, right?
Mhm.
When my lid is flipped, then the part of my brain that's online is the part of the brain that says we're in survival now.
Mhm.
And so it's going to so that message is being sent, that 20% message is being sent to our body, which then increases our heart rate. It makes our breathing faster. We get more, our body temperature increases. Our ears start to tune out safe sounds and only listen for danger sounds. And so our sympathetic nervous system kicks on,
Mhm.
right? And so if our body is feeling that way, then that 80% of the messages then are coming back up to the brain to say, we're not safe, red alert, we're not safe, right?
Mhm.
So what we have to do is start with the body. We can't think ourselves out of this. We have to start with the body.
Mhm.
So now to answer your question,
Yeah.
some ways that we can help with our nervous system and calming that down and having our body feel calmer so that it can send the message to the brain that we're safe, can be really simple things like
Yeah.
breath work. We can do some breath work and taking
Mhm.
some good deep breaths. Rectangle breaths are really good because,
Mhm.
so with a rectangle breath, you breathe in shorter than you breathe out. And so you might breathe in 4, but then breathe out 8.
Mhm.
And then you do that a few times. But what that does is the breathing out, then, if our breathing out is shorter than our breathing in, then
Mhm.
our body is saying, I'm not hyperventilating, I'm safe, we're okay. So we do
Mhm.
that enough times, and our body is going to, the heart rate will come down, the body temperature will come down. Maybe not to baseline, maybe not perfect,
Right.
but it's going to come down so that maybe
Mhm.
enough that we can kind of think clearly and figure out what's going on right now.
Mhm.
So breath work is great. Another one is drinking something cold from a straw. So that putting cold into our system can then say, whoop, we're good. Like
Mhm.
that body temperature can come down because we're safe. That cold feeling coming into our gut. And then the drinking from the straw is that sucking motion can
Mhm.
also tell our brain and our system that we're safe. That's a lot of why we think babies suck when they're
Mhm.
little. They suck their thumbs, they suck their mom, they suck their bottle, they suck their binky, because that is a way to send the message to the brain that we're safe.
Mhm.
So, drinking something cold from a straw is another easy way to just tell our system that we're safe. And then maybe even get going outside, taking a
Mhm.
really short walk. It could just be a
Yeah.
walk around the block, like 10 minutes.
Mhm.
And just like listening to the sounds of nature, being mindful. Like, what do I hear? What do I see? Do I feel my feet on the ground? And then that good breathing, like really focused on our breathing while we're taking in the vitamin D, the sunlight, right? So, those are just some examples of things we could do that can really help tell our body that we're safe so that message can then go to our brain.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely utilize that walking outside and the bilateral movement of your feet
Yes,
moving
so
and
good.
um, like a butterfly technique with your arms is super helpful.
Yeah.
Or even patting on both side of your legs.
Hmm.
I actually had somebody tell me that chewing a piece of gum can help
It
because
can.
our
Yeah.
brains think we're safe enough to stop and eat.
Yeah.
So that can slow down the internal panic that is happening. So I just love to give those tips, and because we don't know in that moment what we need to do.
Yeah.
So to be reminded of strategies that are really simple and easy and free that we can do, I think so helpful. And then we can help our kids do that as well.
Yeah, we're modeling it for them. Like
Mhm.
they will see from us the things we're doing. You
Right.
know, if I'm taking deep breaths and kind of like, hold on, buddy, I just need a minute, and I'm closing my eyes and I'm doing some good breath work, like they're going to see that. Or if I'm like,
Mhm.
you know what, I need a drink of cold water. Do you need a drink of cold water? And we,
Mhm.
or Gatorade or, something, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's really important too, is we're modeling it for our kids, and that it's okay to say, I need a minute. Can I have a
Mhm.
minute?
Mhm.
Because that is actually better than if we explode on them, right?
Oh,
For them to see us say, I just need 2 minutes. I will be right back. I just need to go into the other room and take a deep breath.
yeah.
Or can we just sit here together for just 2 minutes? I'll set the Alexa timer. We're going to breathe together. I just need 2 minutes, right? That's okay to do. We don't have to always be on.
Gosh, that's such an important lesson to tell kids and teach kids that
Yeah.
we don't have to ways to manage their emotions, and they can take that to school when they're going to have interactions with other students or a teacher in a situation where they can empower themselves. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like why are we teaching this in schools? I think it's
Mhm.
just so important. So, are there any other ways that maybe we can help our children regulate their emotions when they're feeling dysregulated? And especially when we're like ramping up and they're ramping up, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
such a tough situation, but it's so imperative that we realize we can be in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, modeling for them is always the
Mm.
first,
Yeah.
right? If we can model for our kiddos how we are calming our nervous systems, they're going to, catch that. and they're going to model that, or they're going to repeat that, right? I
Mhm.
think we have to remember that we cannot give our kids what we don't have. And so if we're not working on calming our nervous system, and if we're not working on the stuff that's triggering us and activating us, then we can't give that to our kids. So we have to remember that too, that if I want to give this to my kiddo, if I want my kiddo to learn how to calm down and not yell at me, I have to do the
Right.
same. So it's a lot of the same stuff for our kids too, teaching them about breath work, which honestly, I think schools are doing more of that,
Mm.
because all of my kids have come home and taught me about like the volcano breath or the square
Wow.
breath, right? So maybe just in our area,
Yeah, right.
but we can teach them that there's lots of ways to do breath work, that it's not
Mhm.
just those, right? Having them drink something cold from a straw can be
Mhm.
helpful.
Mhm.
Maybe even a warm bath can be helpful for our kids. That again, changing that body temperature. So either jumping into a pool or taking a warm bath, but changing that body temperature can be
Mhm.
helpful. I think the important part is helping our kids learn, empowering them to learn what helps them,
Yeah.
right? Because what helps me may not help my
Mm.
kids. So I might be modeling drinking from a straw, a cold drink, right? But that
Mhm.
may not have the same effect on them that it does on me. And
Mhm.
so some of it is just we as parents need to be detectives and be curious and observe. Like my 13-year-old, she likes to go into a space where she can just like either pull a blanket over her head or be in like a small dark space while she kind of breathes and calms herself down, and then she can come back and rejoin the conversation. But that sometimes I have to remind her of that.
Mhm.
So if she is really stressed about something, sometimes I have to say, I can ask her, what do you need? And her answer almost always is, I don't know, or I don't need anything, right?
All
So
right.
then if I remind her, like, hey, remember we made that spot in your closet with all your stuffies and your LED lights, and it's nice and dark in there and quiet. Do you want to go in there for a little bit? So if I have recognized that that helps her, then I can encourage that so that eventually she'll be empowered to just say, Mom, I need to go sit in my closet for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. So I think that's the important part, is us putting out ideas, but then
Yeah.
also observing to see what are they gravitating towards? What is it that's helping them, right? Like
Mhm.
she likes the dark spaces. My son sometimes needs to just get his wiggles out. And so, let's do you want to wrestle? Like, well, that can be helpful, right? So
Right.
I think there's not a one size fits all,
Mhm.
but it's recognizing what is going to help them calm their nervous system and
Mhm.
then helping them get there.
Right. I really love that idea of creating a space where you're anticipating you're going to need this. And
Mhm.
because we all have tough days, and here's what works for you. I think it's incredibly powerful. I love that idea.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that, more often now she's going there on her own.
That's
Um,
great.
but that didn't happen from the beginning.
Yeah,
So,
right.
um, so yeah, I mean, we can create calm corners. We can, have a box full of fidgets. We can have, posters on the wall with like different examples of breath work. We can do all of that stuff,
Mhm.
but we have to really pay attention to what are they gravitating towards? What is helping them?
Mhm.
Because it's not going to work if that's not what if we're missing the
Mhm.
one thing that actually helps them calm down. If it's
Mhm.
actually a bear hug from dad,
Right.
right? Like
Mhm.
we have all of this stuff set up in our house, great. But if the bear hug is where it's at and we're missing that, then, that's not helpful to kiddo.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, that curious piece is important.
Yeah. It was all phenomenal tips. And it really highlights how we as parents have to be leaders
Hmm.
for our children. And it doesn't happen spontaneously. We really have to be intentional about it. And for me, I think we're cycle breakers. We
Hmm.
are intentional about as much as we can be. We have expanded our awareness about our behavior when it comes to our children and our business. And we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but how can we be intentional about breaking the maladaptive cycles that
Yeah.
just aren't serving us or our families.
Yeah. Well, I think, mindfulness is really important.
Yeah.
So being aware of, it could even start with a lot of the families I work with, I actually have them start by taking the ACEs questionnaire,
Yeah.
the adverse childhood experiences, and not to like put a label on them or like make them feel bad, but just like a
Mhm.
jumping off point to say, oh, I actually
Right.
did maybe have some things
Mhm.
happen in my childhood that could be affecting me.
Mhm.
And it's again, it's that mindfulness of like, what am I holding on to in my body? Our body keeps the score. We know that.
Right.
And so if I have maybe a 4 on the ACEs and
Mhm.
it's just this aha moment of like, oh, I didn't really think about that, then that
Mhm.
tells me I probably haven't ever worked on that stuff, right?
Mhm.
And so there that is still in my body because my
Uh,
body holds that. And so it's being mindful of what have I experienced in my past and what am I doing to take steps to heal and help my body release that, right?
mhm.
I'm a big fan of EMDR. I think everybody
Me
should do
too.
EMDR,
Oh my gosh.
right?
It's like and it's not effective for everybody for different reasons, but if you're considering or you don't know about EMDR, definitely check it out or
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just phenomenal in helping to incorporate into the body those things that you've experienced that you don't even know have triggered
hmm,
you.
yep,
That's what I was so surprised about. Like things would come up that I did not even think that were traumatic to me.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it starts there with like
Hmm.
learning about ourselves and
Yeah.
taking the time to like be mindful of my past experiences, being
Mhm.
mindful of how is my body reacting in these moments where there's conflict with my child or my spouse or a coworker or a client, right?
Mhm.
What am I feeling in my body? Because that is oftentimes
Yeah.
a sign that like there's something there that we need to be working on, and then taking those steps to move forward in healing. And it doesn't have to
Mhm.
start with therapy. That can feel scary. That can feel like, well, that's a lot, or
Mhm.
if you've never done therapy before, then yeah, there's a lot of unknowns. And so
Mhm.
start small with maybe
Mhm.
you just talk to a good friend or your spouse, or,
Right.
maybe you start by journaling and just
Mhm.
writing down so that
Mhm.
then you can look back and see, oh, okay, yep, there's stuff here, right?
Mhm.
But to be honest, therapy's not scary. And so if you've never
Yeah.
done therapy, like I know you have, but those that are listening, like it's
Yeah.
not scary.
Right.
It is hard work,
Mhm.
but when you're like years down the road, you look back and say, wow, what
Right.
I am a different person. That's not who I
Yeah.
am anymore. She's still in
Yeah.
there. My life experiences are still a part of who I am.
Mhm.
But like I am so thankful that I
Mhm.
started that journey. So I already forgot your question. Did I answer your
Well, I had thought of some more. So I think it might be important to talk about this little issue about therapy. It can be very intimidating.
Yeah,
And what I learned from the trauma group that I went through with for a year is that actually talk therapy when it comes to trauma is not actually you shouldn't do it. And because it can hardwire those emotions. And that's where something like EMDR comes
yeah,
in. And that was such a game changer for me because I didn't want to talk about it.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people who have been through difficult things feel that way, or two, their brain hides from them
yeah,
what it is that is actually hardwired that you know, survival instinct that you have when you're triggered. So, just to let you know, if you're thinking about therapy, it doesn't mean you have to sit on a couch and go through
yeah.
your entire life, which I
No,
think a lot of people really think that um, is the
that's what it is.
situation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, and that's because that's what we see in the movies,
right.
right? And so if you've never done therapy, that's all you have to go on is what you
Right,
see in the movies, which is the therapist in the chair and the client laying on the couch
right,
and the therapist with a notebook and but
right.
it's not like that, and it doesn't have to be like that.
Mhm.
And there are
Yeah.
so many different modalities of therapy.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
EMDR, IFS is another good one.
Mhm. Oh,
Um, for
yeah.
people that have experienced trauma, right? One
Yeah.
of the things that I do with some of my clients is the safe and sound protocol.
Mhm.
And so
Yep.
we actually just start there. We don't even talk about their
Right.
history or anything. It really is just going through the safe and sound protocol to help rewire or heal their vagus nerve, to rewire how their nervous system responds. And then we can get to, okay, now let's decide, are we going to do EMDR? Like, what's next, right? But sometimes it's just starting with, how do I help my nervous system regulate and
Mhm.
teach my nervous system that I'm safe, and expand my window of tolerance so that then I can do EMDR or
Mhm.
whatever. So there's so many different ways, and it doesn't have to be
Mhm.
sitting on the couch telling your whole life story.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up that idea of a window of tolerance. And we think that we are supposed to have this small window of tolerance. But if you have a small window of tolerance for everything that you need to manage as a mom, as a business owner, that is another sign.
Yeah,
Y- Not only, I mean, it can also mean you just need to do less and simplify your life, but that's another sign that you could have unresolved things that you
yeah,
need help with, because when it constantly feels emotionally too much all of the time or most of the time, whoa, the other side of that, expanding your window of tolerance, like when you've lived like that your whole life and then all of a sudden something happens, you're like, oh, I didn't get upset.
I
Wow.
know. And you notice it. You
You
notice it. You're like,
do. And you're like, wait a minute,
I,
I gotta like enjoy this moment.
yeah, yeah. Like I did that and it didn't do anything to me. I had no
Right.
reaction. Yeah, yeah. Or I had an appropriate reaction.
Right. Exactly. Or just be
Yeah.
like, oh, okay,
Hmm.
so yeah, that's really interesting that's a wonderful feeling
Yeah, for sure.
when you can do that. Yeah, so let's talk about guilt, the mom guilt. It is real.
It is so real. Yeah.
And I heard this interesting comment in a podcast interview recently that I think was actually really helpful. The psychoanalyst said that guilt is good in
Hmm.
that it helps us know when our consciousness is kicking in, and it helps us make a compromise on what is good for us. So when we get triggered and react in ways that we're not proud of, what advice do you have for us to try and break free from that guilt and not beat up ourselves so much? Because, yeah, so many of us, that's why I started this podcast, already don't feel good enough and
Hmm.
they don't feel worthy and in this position to, you know, be the mom that they want to be or the parent they want to be and the business leader that they want to be. So how can we stop beating ourselves up so much about that?
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think guilt is actually a feeling that we should experience, because
Mhm,
that's what then prompts us to grow and heal and make
mhm.
changes for the
Yeah,
better, right? And so I
right.
think it's okay. Like when I yell at my kids, I
Mhm,
feel guilt immediately. And
mhm.
so the first thing then that tells me is I messed up. I need to
Right.
repair. And I am so good at repairing, and
Mhm.
it's because I have had years of practice. But for me, that guilt is okay, because then
Mm,
I'm recognizing it and I'm immediately able to go talk
yeah.
to my kiddo and just say, you know what? I should not have yelled at you about that. And honestly,
Mhm,
nobody should yell at you. And so I'm really
mhm,
sorry that I did that, and I'm going to try and do better. Right. So for me, it's more about this shame. Like when it then
mm,
becomes shame, where then I start
mhm,
to go into this place of, I shouldn't even be a mom. Like
mm,
these kids deserve so much better than me. What, like I'm ruining their lives. That I think is where we have to change that cycle,
mhm.
because nobody's perfect.
Right.
Like it actually is better for our kids for us not to be perfect so that they can learn about rupture and repair and what
Right.
that looks like to say I'm sorry and that it's okay to admit when we're wrong. Like these are things that they need to learn so when they're adults in relationship, they
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's okay to just yell at somebody and then be like, well, that's your problem if you didn't like that I yelled at you, or leave the relationship because it got too hard. Like
Right.
we're modeling really positive things by not being perfect. So I think if we're going into this place where that guilt is shifting over into shame and it's, consuming us,
Mm-hmm.
that should be a sign that there's something I need to work on. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it's another one of those kind of red flags of if I'm feeling that a lot, if I'm not taking that feeling of, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and then
Mm-hmm.
spinning it into, I'm going to apologize and make this right, or spinning it into growth or healing, if it's becoming a spiral and I'm spinning out of control,
Yeah.
that would be a time where I would have to say, okay, let's do something about this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's easier said than done
Mm-hmm.
because if our brains are wired for shame, if we
Yeah.
felt shamed our whole childhood,
Yeah.
if our parents were always saying, why do you always do this? Can't you just be the good kid? If we're hearing these messages that we're not worthy, then shame is deeply ingrained in us and our brain is wired for that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it takes work to
Yeah.
unwire that and like
Mm-hmm.
get to a place.
Yeah.
I still feel shame often,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's like recognizing that, being aware of that. When I feel that, I usually talk to my husband. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
just say like, hey, I feeling like maybe I am not the best mom for these kids. And I'm able to just talk it through with him and he
Mm-hmm.
helps me like, we've been together for a long time. So he just knows how to tap into my brain a little bit. But um, that can even be helpful, just talking to someone who really knows us and knows that's
Mm-hmm.
not our truth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then doing the work to like heal that part.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful reminder. I think we kind of have messages that we should just ignore the guilt and we don't talk about the shame. And it is, I mean, it was just a beautiful message right there, in that we don't need to live in this shameful place. We're not perfect. Perfect
Mm-mm,
actually doesn't exist.
mm-mm. It
And
shouldn't.
yeah, and being perfect, like you said, it's actually not helping our kids. We're helping them walk through things and recognizing our own failures. It's just, gosh, it's so important.
Yeah.
It really creates that connection with our
Yeah.
kids. And our, you know, it just, I don't know, it just the whole trauma journey has made me such a better person and a better business owner and a better parent. I mean, it's just win, 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 win. Um,
Hmm.
so, if there is anybody listening who's already feeling overwhelmed and not sure where to start, I am sure that there are listeners feeling that way right now. Like, I
Yeah.
have all these things. Yes, I yell at my kids and I feel stressed, and everything kind of feels out of control. What's maybe a one or a few shifts that they can make to begin to have some more calm and harmony in their lives?
Yeah. I think that we oftentimes put everybody else first. And so I
Yeah.
think that's an important shift is give yourself just 10 minutes a day for just you. I mean, more than that if you can. But
Yeah.
if you feel stretched, give yourself just 10 minutes where it's
Right.
just you and yourself. And maybe just sit in the quiet, or you light your favorite candle and you activate all your senses, right? A smell you like, you do some of that like butterfly hugging,
Hmm.
rubbing your arms, rubbing your legs, just sitting in the dark maybe, or going for a walk,
Right.
or journaling, whatever it is that feels good for you, reading a book, listening to a podcast, but give yourself 10 minutes or more where you're just taking care of yourself,
Right.
because we forget about that, and then you can't. I already said this, but we can't give our kids what we don't have. But also, if our cup is empty, then what's at the bottom of that cup is what we're giving ourselves, which is the coffee grounds and the yuck.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's fill our cup little by little so that we have more for ourselves. So
Yeah.
that I think is the most important for us mamas, because we just have a tendency to
Mm-hmm.
put everyone else first,
Mm-hmm. Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah. If anybody's listening that feels like they're ready to start on this journey where they're healing and ready to grow in that way in their lives, what's a message that you would like to leave with them?
Baby steps.
Mm,
Don't try and jump into the deep end
yes.
both feet.
Yeah.
Like, just take baby
It doesn't
steps.
happen overnight for
It
sure.
doesn't happen overnight. And set little goals. So
Mm,
90 days, I am hoping that I can, feel like I am, maybe in 90 days, I'm going to have a good habit of spending 10 minutes with myself every single day. Right.
hmm.
And then when we get to that 90 days, even if it's not every single day, my guess is it'll be more than it was when you started.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. It's baby steps. We can't just say,
Hmm.
okay, today's the day where I'm going to change everything and I'm going to be better, and because then we're going to feel disappointed and get back
Yeah.
into that shame spiral.
Hmm. For sure. No, I think that's really solid, wonderful advice. It's so true. We do want it overnight, and you'll get there, and it gets easier as
Yeah.
you go. I will definitely, I can attest to that. But just starting in little baby steps is so important. I love
Yeah.
that. It's
Yeah.
been such a great conversation, as
So
always. I
yeah.
will leave a link to our conversation on your podcast in the show notes.
Cool.
Where can listeners connect with you
Yeah.
and learn about all that you do?
Yeah. So my podcast, Mending Families, is on all the platforms. I also am on YouTube, so they can find me on there. And then my website is www.mendingfamilieswa.com. And I have a lot of resources on there, and you can find all my podcasts on there as well. But and some freebies. So, and then
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be able to send you a link to a freebie of 6 tips on regulating your nervous system. So if you could include that in the show notes too, I'd love
Yeah,
to have that
happy
be
to.
something the audience could grab onto. So, and of course I'm on all the social media, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
love it. You have so many creative ways and things that honestly I wish I would have known sooner.
I
But I'm
know.
so
It's
but
never too late though.
right, it's never too late. The fact that, we started and we're doing what we're doing, it's more than enough. And so thank
Yeah,
you so much for joining me today.
of course.
Yeah,
Thank you, Angela. It's
thank
fun.
you.